So I was looking at our analytics on the podcast the other day, and there's a section there that tells us like the peak times when we get most of our clicks and downloads and streams and whatever. And it says that for the KrakCast, our highest listening time is Wednesdays at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Yeah, Wednesdays at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So what's your takeaway from that?
Hump day? I don't know.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. So people are at work.
Has
kind
that
of like,
changed with the pandemic?
I don't know.
Maybe you should look at it historically.
I don't see the logic in this, but the statistics are clear.
Maybe they're bored. Like, you get to the middle of the week, you're bored, you had a good weekend, your brain thinks, you can deal with annoying people and loud noise, and you turn it on, and then...
And is that Wednesday. Central European time, or is that kind of some...
Where white noise?
Yeah, that's a good question, Josh, about that. I don't know. I'm guessing it's in our time zone. Like, I don't know, because most of our clicks come from, Poland and our own time zone, of course, so I guess that, it's Wednesday at 2. So my takeaway from this is that
lunchtime.
People are, maybe late lunch. People are in the office. A lot of people are at home, and they just take a break from their cheating, basically, while they're supposed to be working.
It's never, guys, if you're listening, it's never cheating. Never.
No? Dr. Mike, any theory on this?
I'll be honest, before I was part of the KrakCast and I was just a listener like the rest of everybody out there, I listened mainly...
Your dreams can come true, too.
Just
look at Gabby.
I would listen, in the gym. So it was like, 6 a.m. or something like that, to help me out with my workout on the treadmill.
Wednesday at 2 or 3. I don't know.
Sorry. Run that one by me. That one by me again. On the treadmill? Since when?
Yeah,
it's the energy, guys. It's the energy.
Exactly. Well, pandemic.
Yeah, you were on a treadmill at 6 in the morning? Bullshit, you were.
6:30, basically. Yeah, but when I used to go...
PM, maybe.
When I used to go to the gym regularly for like years until about the last year,
This is not sounding very convincing at all, Mike. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, sorry for the detour, but I thought that'd be interesting to share.
I used to listen to it in the early afternoons myself.
Early afternoon, okay.
Yeah.
And our stats on the weekends are basically 0, so few people listen on the weekend.
Because everyone's drunk.
Well, that's true. Our audience probably is drunk. That's very true.
Didn't you have to be drunk to listen to it? I don't know.
Well,
makes no sense.
I've never listened to a single episode.
Let's get to the... Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention last week, our friend Scottish John sat in last week to talk to cover the news with us. We forgot to mention last week was episode number 350, and so we like nice round numbers. Or kind of, is that a round number? I guess it is, kind of. So 350 episodes, guys. So what's the wedding gift you give for 350 years of anniversaries or whatever?
Yeah,
a gravestone.
That's like a rhodium wedding, isn't it? It's a half-life.
So well done, guys. Dr. Mike, you've been here for I don't know how many, not quite all of them, but most of them. So do you feel like a veteran, a podcasting veteran now?
Yeah, definitely lots of war-torn scars on me.
Yeah, Gabi, any comments?
I'm sad I missed it, actually.
You missed most of them?
I'm sad I missed last week.
Oh.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I was taken up a mountain.
They're still there. Wait, go,
excuse me.
This Wednesday at 2:00, 3:00, go listen to one.
And screaming and sacrifice on a mountain.
Okay, let's jump into the news here, which we may have forgotten, which is a purpose for this particular episode. Let's start with everybody's favorite store, Zabka.
Biedronka.
You like Biedronka more than Zabka?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Although you've reminded me, because I've got a book from Amazon sitting in the Zabka around the corner, which I must go and collect.
Oh, I'm a Zabka person myself. Gabi?
I like Carrefour. They have bean sprouts.
Oh, don't make it complicated.
Carrefour or
sorry, Biedronka or Zabka. Pick one.
I prefer Marks and Spencer, but they don't have one of those.
Oh, God. Anyway, we learned this week that Zabka, in its never-ending quest for total domination of the Polish market, they're going to start offering, in Polish they call it teleporady. It's like consultation, tele-advice for medical situations. So you'll be able to go to Zabka, pay a certain amount, not sure how much it is. You get a phone number, Dr. Mike, and it sets up a private conversation with a medical specialist.
With Dr. Mike.
Good idea or what?
Hey, I'm making money off of it. Well, after you order one of those hot dogs, you need to see a doctor.
Well, especially if John or Dave is behind you in the line.
Yeah, I'll club you over the head for wasting my goddamn time.
Well, teleporady, so telemedicine, has really kicked off in the last year and a half in Poland because of the pandemic. NFZ, the National Health Fund, has started, this was always available, but it was never really promoted until people didn't want to leave their house. So they were reminded of the fact that you can actually just call your doctor, organize a visit not online, but over the phone, where they'll talk to you, say what the problem is, et cetera, and then if it's possible, they'll just give you either a referral or a prescription for medication that you'll get as an SMS, and that's in the free healthcare part of the system. But you can also now do this, privately, where you buy the voucher in Zabka. And then, you punch in the code that you got from Zabka when you call the info hotline. And then, you talk to a doctor, you get your prescription, which you have to pay for then. Or you get your ELT status, or, your day off from work. And you're a happy camper that way.
Mike, do you think, is it a coincidence that this is coming in the time of COVID, or is this a cause and effect thing?
No, I think this is definitely Zabka realizing that this is another money-making possibility.
Yeah.
It's not a huge investment for them. They just, into their machines, they stick in a new option they can buy, credit for your phone or credit for your doctor's visit.
Gabby, what do you make of this?
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Like it's like a top-up voucher for the doctor. And part of me thinks, isn't it really easy to abuse? Like, you could just make stuff up.
I think that's
what do you mean, abuse like how?
Like you just, doctor, I'm feeling really ill. Can I have a day off, please? What's your symptoms? Oh, well, I've got a temperature and a this and a that and a blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, wow, it sounds like chlamydia. Have 3
take the
weeks
next
off.
4 months off.
That's what most doctors tell you, yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly. So what's the difference with how it is?
Because at least then there's a semblance of gatekeeping or professionalism. Like
I agree with you, Gabby. I agree with you that it sounds weird. But Josh, you and I were talking a few days ago about this. When I first saw the news, this struck me as really weird. But at the same time, when you think about the number of people who live within 300 meters of a Zabka and their reach, their incredible reach all over the country, practically it kind of makes sense to me. So I'm coming around to it now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, actually, I think it's one of those. I think also particularly maybe Gabby and I have a similar kind of starting point from all of this. When you grow up in a country where there's the sainted NHS and access to healthcare is constant and free and obviously perfect, and so there's this kind of, I think, built-in feeling that the idea that you go to the corner shop to get your doctor stuff sorted out for a small fee seems a bit weird, but actually I think it's a very, very sensible kind of arrangement, actually. I mean, I don't even have a doctor. I don't know. I never get sick. So.
Dr. Mike, do you think any compromise in the quality of medical care, getting it through Zabka? Or is this clever, or is this kind of a stunt?
I think the Zabka aspect of this doesn't...
STUNT.
It was the way you said it, though. It was
what did I say?
Emphasis.
Stunt. This is just to preclude any jokes I thought were going to come from your direction.
This is only going to handle the day-to-day things where you're feeling a little under the weather, you just need a day off, or you need some kind of prescription, or also patients or women who need.
How about what Gabby says about potential abuse?
Oh, definitely it's going to be abused in that sense. It's like you're basically paying somebody to give you a day off from work that you're going to have a legit piece of paper for, and you don't have to actually physically go to your doctor to do this.
I mean, number one, you're not going to go to Zabka to get diagnosed with cancer. So,
at least one would hope not.
I just went out to buy a packet of cigarettes.
If you're going, it will either be for something like a bad back or a common cold. In which case,
nowadays common colds aren't so.
In which case, one might ask the question: do you really want to go and visit Zabka and catch a flu?
Or an evil-smelling discharge.
That's a good point you raised, Gabby. I mean, from Zabka's perspective, Dr. Mike, isn't this inviting tons and tons of sick people into the stores?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they'll have an online version of the payment system soon enough, or you can send your friend to go pick up the voucher for you. But I'm just thinking, you like Josh was saying, you buy a pack of cigarettes, they're like, may cause cancer. It's like, oh, may cause cancer. You know what? I'll also ask for a voucher to my doctor.
Speaking of payments, I haven't seen any numbers in any of the articles I've read so far, but how much, just ballpark, how much would you expect to pay for this kind of service?
Ballpark, I'm expecting the family doctor one to be from 50 to 100 zlotys. And the specialist to be from 80 to 150 zlotys, like those kind of ranges.
Okay.
Gabby, I think a bit less.
Can you see yourself using this, though?
No. If I'm going to pay someone, I want to see them. Like,
Isn't it more convenient? Let's say it's something minor, and
So you're not a phone sex kind of girl.
No, not
it's something minor, and instead of going through the inconvenience of making a trip to a doctor's office, you can simply go to a Zabka, which I'm sure you have 5 minutes away from your home, or 10 minutes. Isn't that easier to take care of minor things, not cancer?
No. I want to get what I pay for.
All right.
I want to see the person. I want to look them in the eyes. I want them to take my temperature.
You want to feel their cold hands running across your body.
Yes, I do.
Wait. Slow down. Say it again.
I do.
All right, let's move on.
Does this hurt?
Actually, I do.
I don't pay to be talked to.
Okay, Josh, last word on this subject.
I have a Zabka-related question, because the last few times that I've bought stuff in Zabka, they've always asked me, do you have Zabka? Which I think is the...
Zabka.
Zabka. Yeah, it's the Zabka app.
Yeah.
Oh, I managed to, yeah. So, does anyone have... what is it? Does it...
Oh, you get points.
It's another way of getting...
Yeah, Mike proudly shows off his barcode.
You get a small coffee after 6 months of
loyalty,
spending tons of money and stuff. Let's move on. We're going to stay with Zabka. Another Zabka-related piece of news. This one kind of political, Dr. Mike. There's a company called Ruch, which used to run all the kiosks, or most of the kiosks, in the old days. Kiosks aren't much of a thing anymore, but they still exist as a company, and they control most of the press distribution all over the whole country. Magazines, newspapers, all the physical magazines and newspapers that end up on the shelves at places like Zabka. Well, Ruch has unilaterally withdrawn from their contract with Zabka. They say they're not going to supply them anymore, leaving Zabka without a supplier for their press, obviously. But the intriguing political part, Dr. Mike, comes from the fact that Ruch is majority owned by the government, which also owns Orlen, which is a competitor.
Majority owned by Orlen, which is majority owned by the government.
Well, okay, there's another
few more shells here, but yeah.
But is this a political thing? Is this a competition thing? What's going on here?
It is interesting because, Ruch, as the main distributor for a lot of periodicals, decided, where it goes and how it works. And Zabka is definitely one of the easiest places to buy newspapers. They were working together for 2 years, and they were not able to come to an agreement, so Ruch is pulling out. And now if you want your newspapers, you have to go to the gas stations, to Orlen. Though Zabka can probably supply their newspapers from other sources as well. I don't really see them being as much of a competition, though, because Zabka is your friendly neighborhood around the corner grab something store, where Orlen is a convenience store as well, like gas stations, petrol stations are around the world where you can also buy.
You go there for gas first.
Yeah, but you're not going to... Well, Zabka doesn't have my newspaper anymore, so I'm going to go to drive, 5 or 10 minutes to an Orlen.
So, I mean, is there a reason why Ruch are kind of boycotting Zabka?
That's the question here. I mean, what are their motivations? Are they trying to undercut them? Zabka is the 900-pound gorilla in the Polish market when it comes to convenience stores.
Right.
Maybe this is some small way for Orlen to punch back. Who knows?
You're open on a Sunday. How dare you?
Someone's chairman insults some of the other chairman's wife.
My question was going to be: does anyone actually read physical papers anymore?
Oh yeah, the readership is way down. Maybe we're not representative, but a lot of people still read the.
But do those people?
Those crosswords with pretty girls on the cover.
Do they really go to Zabka to buy their newspapers?
I would assume that they're more.
Where else do you go?
I'll be honest. When I'm thinking reading, I'm still thinking more elderly people, who are more likely to walk, down the street to physically buy it from Zabka than to get in their car and drive around town to a gas station to buy it from, their periodicals there.
And if the kiosks still exist, which I'm sure there are a few, and I've got to say, just as an aside, I'm very sad kiosks don't exist anymore, or at least, disappearing, because I like them. I think.
Well, I do too. But I have to say, when I first visited Poland, which was in the midst of winter, back when winters were cold, and I thought you go out to the kiosk and you have to tap on the window and they slide it open, and you think you're stuck there in that little box with a kind of stinking paraffin heater, like all these fumes, and there's not even a toilet. I mean, it's just a horrible working existence.
For me, kiosks were like the weirdest thing. It's like when I came to Poland in the 90s, a kiosk, you walk up and it's like they sold everything and nothing. It's like there's shampoo, there's condoms, there are little toys.
Women's underwear.
Yeah, women's underwear.
So I heard.
Cleaning products and candy bars, plus tickets for transportation. It was like the most random assortment of things.
Everything you need.
20 players, number 6, and a pair of panties.
Better than Zabka, because I don't think you can get your stockings.
Just quickly as an aside before we move on, this reminds me of I have a friend who ran a Zabka some time ago, and she told me that the press section, what we're talking about now, the newspapers and magazines, was by far the biggest source of what they call shrinkage, shoplifting basically in the entire store. So this is what people steal more than anything else. Is the press that walks out the door.
Pretty easy to do, isn't it? You just roll it up and
walks out the door more than anything else. Well, we'll see how this goes. Rook's motivations, again, unknown, but the fact that they're controlled by the government, at least through one or two degrees of separations.
From what you're saying, that Zabka don't really give a shit anyway, because
they do, because now who do they turn to? Because Rook is not a distributor, they are the distributor for all the big titles on the Polish market.
How many Rook kiosks do you think there are these days? I mean, I know there's one at the top of Brzego-Chawa.
Not many.
But it's like noteworthy for being, oh, look, a Rook kiosk. You don't see many of those these days.
I guess maybe the idea is to make Orlen the only place you can get a lot of magazines. But then again, you would think the newspapers and magazines would have a voice on this too. They want to be in as many places as possible. Right, so you would think they would revolt against Rook for making this move. So I don't know. Interesting though.
We don't really have a very good grasp of this, do we?
We'll see what Zabka does with this shelf space that is suddenly going to be available. Maybe they'll put the medical information cards and doctor stuff.
More men's magazines.
75 zlotys a pop. If it is, then
let's move on. We can't not mention this, Dr. Mike. I don't want to get too deep into it, but let me get your feedback on this. We got polls this week. Gauging the support of all the usual political parties and
poll of
polls. How many times can we make the same joke? And Peace's support, the Law and Justice Party,
no statute of limitations on that
is as big as it has been. No signs that they're suffering. No signs that they're suffering from a pushback on anything they've done recently. Is this feeding their confidence? You might say arrogance. What do they have to do to kind of lose the significant lead they have over PO?
Really, besides, I don't know, raping little children, there's really no way for them to screw this up. But the truth is, PO...
Killing puppies, let's use that.
Yeah, killing puppies. Oh, God, no, that would be horrible. PO right now is... They have no likable personalities. That's part of it.
What are they for?
And Peace does?
Peace doesn't, but they have at least... quote-unquote values or principles that
they have policies
policies that's part of the electorate.
Something beats nothing.
Exactly. And there are a lot of people who dislike PO and the other parties so much that the fact that Peace is more or less consistent with what they were is good enough. It's like they might not agree with them, but at least they know what they're getting there. With the other parties, it's more like, you guys are slick, sleazy politicians. We don't want any more of that.
I was actually speaking to one of these guys yesterday, one of my friends, who, by all intents and purposes, looking at the certain demographics and all of that, should not be voting or have voted for Peace. But he did the first time round, and the reason he gave me was because I hate PO and I hate the Liberals. Not because he likes me, and he didn't vote for them the next time, and he doesn't like them, but he just does not like, quote unquote, the Liberals.
Dr. Mike, in a parliamentary democracy, if you're the party in power, you can kind of cynically manipulate things. You can call elections when your popularity is at a peak to, give your party the best chance of, a new mandate to govern. Can you see Peace using this in the next, 6 months or so, using this opportunity to say, okay, let's have elections now? I
can't rule it out, but I don't see it happening. They did this, more than 10 years ago when they were part of a coalition party where Kaczynski, called early elections and they lost. That's when PO came into party for 2 terms. And now that Peace is in power, I think they learned a lesson from back then. They're not, even though the polling says that they're in charge, that they're in front, and their government is actually quite weak when it comes to the amount of mandates and seats they have right now, because their coalition is a little
ropey.
Exactly. But they probably realize they're still in a strong position, and there are no big policies they want to bring in right now that they need the extra votes. They can play around. They're comfortable. They're fine. They're in charge. So I don't think they're going to risk it.
I don't think it's going to happen either, because we live in strange times as well. You don't know what's going to happen in the next month or two, especially with winter coming in and the coronavirus situation still ongoing. and the vaccine thing, and what are they going to do? Are they going to start doing what France do and bring in like your only entry only if you're vaccinated to certain places or not? Like, I think it's too dodgy for them to do that anytime
I think
soon.
it's time for an uprising.
Well, but it's just, Dr. Mike, the piece goes from one fight to another, whether it's COVID related or European Union related or LGBT or tax policy or what have you, and there doesn't seem to be a consequence in terms of support. So they kind of feel bulletproof right now, I think, right? So,
but the main reason for that is the fact that the opposition is completely
hopeless.
Exactly. Hopeless, no personalities, no policies that make any sense.
I think, what's that party coming up, 2020?
2050.
2050?
Yeah, but basically...
that'll be when they get elected.
Yeah, well, that's what they're aiming for, but they're polling quite high, aren't they?
They were higher, now they're back lower because Tusk went back to... Basically, they were not going to get any votes off of peace. All they did was break the opposition up even more so.
Let's move on to a really interesting story, Gabby, having to do with Krakow being known as a green city. I think we mentioned this a week or two ago. Krakow was one of the finalists, along with, I think, 3 other cities for a European Union designation of green city, which means it was kind of a recognition of their environmentally friendly policies, sustainable development, the usual things. They made it to the final stage, and in a shock development, Krakow was not selected ultimately, and it has to do, it seems, to some degree, with a very strongly worded letter that was written by some activists here in Krakow who sent this letter to the judging committee.
Yes, that's right.
So that was my setup for you to.
Oh, what do you want me? You actually want me to say something, right?
So what did they? Yeah, what did they do?
Well, they basically sent a 9 or 10 page letter, essentially outlining why Krakow's why it was all bullshit, basically.
Yeah, kind of the application was fraudulent, basically.
Fraudulent application. Yeah, well, it was all like linked to. There were lots of sources for it, so they did pretty well. It wasn't just like a rant. It was sourced with studies and newspaper.
Let me just add a couple of the highlights. They said Krakow, in their application, they pointed to a park on Karmelicka that they planned to build, which hasn't been built. They pointed to the bike lane they created on Grzegorzeska, which is supposed to be liquidated. Who knows?
This is
drama there.
Already.
Well, it's already been liquidated, but
they cut down all these trees.
The problem was that was part of the aren't we wonderful thing? Like, we built this bike lane on Grzegorzeska, aren't we?
Right, now it's gone.
Now it's gone. It's liquidated. Yeah, there was my favourite part of the letter was about the lack of consultations, which is absolutely true in my opinion, because it's happened several times. I used to live, no longer, but in Osiedle Podwawelskie, and over there is an old nursery for trees, and it's a rather large nursery as well. So it's a big space of land, and what the residents were saying that it should be a park. We should make that into a park. And the city were basically like, no, we're not making it into a park. We're going to sell it to developers, and the developers are going to develop it. And that's it. End of. There was not really much in the way of consultations. And a lot of it is being criticised for being quite autocratic, top down, not really consulting with the residents.
Well, even if the points they make in their letter were legitimate, it seems that they basically, right at the finish line, almost at the finish line, Krakow's about to get this designation. And by the way, a 600,000 euro prize that comes with it, 2.5 million zlotys, presumably to be spent on other green-oriented projects.
Supposedly, yes.
Right at the finish line, they get kind of undercut by their own people, basically, activists here in Krakow.
Yeah.
Now, so my question for you is this like legitimate whistleblowing by the activists and, kind of exposing what was a fraudulent application? Or is it kind of needless sabotage by a group that, could easily, consult on how that 600,000 euro could have been well spent on green projects here in town?
I think they were absolutely right to do it. I do not believe any of that money would go into green projects. And if they did, there wouldn't be any consultations anyway. There are civic projects in Krakow that hardly ever get through, and the ones that do get through are ones that have already been kind of pre-approved almost. A lot of them aren't. So I think they were absolutely right to do it, and I think if Krakow want to win, Mayor of Krakow and everyone else listening to this wonderful show, pull your socks up. Actually do your consultations properly. Don't just chop down trees.
So Josh,
without putting anyone in the loop. We're watching and we're listening.
I read this letter and I thought, I would charitably describe it as a steaming pile of ordure. I think it was from beginning to end, it was trotting out these alarming statistics of, tens, dozens, even hundreds of trees being mercilessly destroyed.
47,000 to be precise.
And how many trees in your average forest, you think?
It doesn't. I don't know, but
they don't make a sound though when they chop them down.
Sometimes you have to cut down trees, though.
Sometimes you do, but the question
47,000 sounds like a lot. But
also,
in fact,
trees don't live forever. Trees get to an age where they can become dangerous. I mean, I seriously have a lot of problems with a lot of environmental campaigning because it is uninformed, emotional posturing and. Like forestry management, tree care for trees and something is a serious subject. People who are trained in that, they know you have to look after trees. When they get to a certain age, they become dangerous. They have to be felled. There are trees that need to be pollarded, cut right the way back on a regular basis. You see this in London all the time. When I was living in London, every 4 or 5 years, they would pollard all the trees in the streets where I lived, and all the residents would go like, "Oh, they're cutting down all the trees." And then, of course, about 2 years later, all the branches and leaves are back again because that's what trees do.
I've never seen them really pollarding them in Krakow.
Well, no, but
Josh, you think this is an own goal, basically, this whole sabotaging the application?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have time for these people. I think they're just kind of
respond by saying it wasn't just about the trees. Though the trees were the first paragraph. The rest of it, the trees. I'll give you a few points for that. Yes.
But what else? It was all about the trees.
No, it wasn't. There were like 7 different paragraphs. Noise pollution.
And by the way, Gabby, we have to point out again that we are assuming that the letter had a decisive impact on the judges, and that's the reason. Maybe there are other reasons, but I think in a contest like this, if you're invited to apply, you're probably going to win. It was like almost a formality. When you get to the finals, you're going to win. So it's likely that this did make an impact. It did make the difference, but we don't have official confirmation of that.
The other thing was the pollution as well, like the Hala Targowa. I think in the letter it was said that they were basically mentioned twice, and that the mayor of Krakow took all of the credit for it. Essentially, when it wasn't a city initiative at all. Actually, it was a reactionary initiative to local grassroots movements, and they had quotes from the mayor saying, "Well, we don't think it's a good idea that you start advertising that the air's really bad because of tourism." For example.
Actually, I mean, I thought.
Wait, let Dr. Mike get in. Dr. Mike, what's your take on this?
Everything. With the letter for me, it was more along the lines of the application that the city sent out wasn't what. They weren't saying like, "Oh, Krakow is a green city because of this." They were saying like, Krakow is a green city because we plan on opening these parks. We plan on making these bike paths here. We plan on installing these new environmentally friendly installations here, et cetera, et cetera. It was all about what they wanted to do. A lot of while the letter that was sent out was basically like, yeah, they're making a lot of plans, but the few things that they could have actually implemented, they never did. And actually, they kind of pulled back on a lot of these things. So maybe not all that green.
I think we should link to it in the description when the thing goes out. Don't you? Let the readers decide. Or
when the thing goes out, we'll do that.
You're assuming our listeners can read
the thing. The thing.
Read it. It was an amazing letter.
Most of them can't even hear.
Wednesdays at 2:00. I told you. What else can we cover in the time we have left here? Let's a quick mention. A final word of rest in peace. Krakow Plaza, formerly known as Plaza. What was it called? Galeria Krakow Plaza.
The first mall in Krakow, basically.
The first one in Krakow, off Aleja Pokoju, on the left as you're going away from town, right before Imyadin, opened in the year 2000. It's been struggling for a good decade, and it finally got a death blow this week when they literally padlocked the doors. I mean, they closed off the entrance to the parking garage even. You cannot physically go in the building. The last tenant was a gym.
Gym. It's like they're basically finished now. It's like it's a matter of days.
This is unfortunately, Dr. Mike. This is the location of Krakow's only IMAX theater. I don't know what they're going to do about that. If they're going to do anything,
they're looking for a new location. But yes, IMAX has been closed for a while now. And I'll be honest, when I go to the cinema, 90% of the time I would go to IMAX because otherwise I was watching it at home. The IMAX movie experience was the only thing for me that actually made sense to actually go see a movie.
The building has been sold to some kind of investment fund. Not exactly clear on what they're going to do with it. Speculation has for a long time surrounded the possibility of converting it into office space, maybe some kind of medical center.
They should convert it into a park,
but
maybe a nice green space. What do you think? Plant some trees,
paintball arena.
Oh, so the investors spent money on the building so they could destroy it. Yeah, I don't know.
There's a nice pond there, isn't there?
There's a nice pond next door.
Artificially made, but the thing is, these kind of buildings aren't built to last for generations. You know, it was built 20 years ago. It's basically it's drywall and
ugly.
stucco.
It's ugly. And when I was there 10 years ago, it's the first place I went to the cinema.
Horrible.
And it was really out the way. And even then, the shops were like 50% full.
I've said before on our show that they built it way too early. The area around the arena, Ulica Lema, it's just new blocks going up constantly. There's tons and tons of people there, but it's too late to save the Galeria, so something else will take its place. But it's clear that for a retail space, it just simply does not work.
You mentioned Ulica Lema, and I think this is an apposite moment for me to point out that today would have been Stanisław Lem's 100th birthday.
That explains why they keep talking about him on the radio recently.
Yes, yeah. Famous Polish science fiction writer, of course, as you all know.
See his mural in Kazimierz.
He wrote Solaris, which was brilliantly made by Andrei Tarkovsky, the Russian film director.
That the George Clooney version is unwatchable.
And then remade by everyone's favourite.
Awful.
Doctor,
oh my
George Clooney.
God, that's a horrible
It's
movie.
like a complete misunderstanding. It's.
What else can we talk about? Oh yeah, Dr. Mike, new train station, what do you call it? Like a suburban train station being set up around Hala Targowa.
Hala Targowa, Zagórski, yes, and people aren't very happy with the way it's looking right now.
Because it looks like shit. That's
it's there, but it's like just metal frames and stuff like that. And when people saw the first images, like, what is this? This scaffolding.
It looks like a temporary thing, doesn't it?
Yes, and the designers are saying like, no, we're going to cover this up. I mean, I'm like, yeah, but just because you cover it up doesn't mean the shape and the outlining structure.
Well, actually, the cover part of it is up. It's just like a metal sheet bent to cover a bench. It's basically begging people to cover it in graffiti. Basically, that's what it is. Instead of using like a net or like a mesh design, they use a solid piece of sheet metal. In that location, it's going to be absolutely covered with graffiti within 48 hours.
I can smell the urine already. Yeah. And the worst thing, actually, what really pisses me off is like they spent $1 billion zlotys on this whole infrastructure connection here, and they still did what I hate, is they have the train lines are separated. So instead of like getting onto one platform where on the left and the right you have the train lines are separate the platforms. So if you realize you get on the wrong platform, you have to go back down the stairs and go back up the stairs instead of having like a platform in the middle.
A middle platform.
Genius. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Won't this be the closest substation in the entire city, closest to the main train station? I mean, it's like 200 meters away. It's
a little more. Yeah, but basically this is supposed to be the place where you get off to get on the bus and everything to go to the more, say, like eastern part of town. So you're coming in from anywhere outside of Krakow, and this is the area you want to get in for. This will be the main transportation hub.
Save you some time instead of going all the way to Główne.
And make sure that Główne isn't too clustered or too cramped with people.
It's a great idea, but the design does not look good at all, and it's going to be.
I mean, it was supposed to be opened a few months ago. Now it's going to be apparently spring next year. Well, they still have time to do something with it. We'll see what happens. What I think is funny is like all the articles I read about this where people were complaining and the city's saying, no, we're finishing it up. It's fine. They're not showing any like artist conceptions or like, oh, this is what we plan. It's like they're just saying like, no, it's not going to look like this. Well, if it's not going to look like this, why don't you have any pictures that
just
you could
show us? Let us have a look. Why not? Got nothing to, nothing to fear, nothing to hide. Yeah, show us the plans.
I think they really weren't planning anything in, and then now all of a sudden like, oh crap, we have to figure something out.
Yeah, they obviously need a public consultation and more trees.
Well,
for sure.
I agree with half of that.
We're way over time here. The time we have left, let's put it to a vote here. We got a couple. Any suggestions as to what we should close out with here? What do you think?
News we're talking about.
Yeah, as specifically what piece of we got too much stuff here. We can't cover it all.
Oh, right.
We'll save some stuff for next week. But anybody have any pet projects we want to mention today?
I think the main things I want to talk about, we could talk about next week when there's more information.
This is a great outro.
There's a breaking corruption
Great
story going
outro.
on.
Yeah,
this is what happens when
This
is what happens when I stop being an autocrat dictator and throw it to the room. You just look at me like, I don't know.
We're too used to your iron
Jesus
boots, man. Too
Christ.
used to it.
Yeah.
All right, just very quickly, the last thing we'll mention, this is actually from a week ago, but it's still worth mentioning because we find it funny. Josh, we learned that the cops somehow managed to catch somebody who was doing 250 kilometers an hour somewhere on the autostrada.
Well, I can translate that into English, which is 155 miles per
Okay,
hour.
it's fucking fast.
Yeah.
And we learned that the driver had a really interesting reaction when he was finally pulled over.
Yeah, which is basically amazement that the police had a vehicle capable of driving fast enough to stop him.
I'm amazed myself. I've never seen them driving anything, at least like a marked car. They have an Alfa Romeo. I think that's their speed vehicle for the autostrada.
I do. I think that's kind of hilarious, given the reputation of Alfa. I mean, even the Italian police don't use Alfa Romeos.
So what do you think the
Do you
police
think
were
they
driving?
sent out the car?
No, it was probably. I think it was an unmarked car. It was probably a BMW, like 3
Okay.
Series or 5 Series.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about it being that speed of 250 kilometers an hour is that all the big German powerful cars, if you like, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, thank you. They're actually kind of voluntarily limited to a maximum speed of 250 kilometers an hour.
So it's maxed out then. basically.
Yeah, I mean, they're capable of going faster, but you actually, there's a limiter that cuts in. Of course, you can pay and get that removed, and I think this stupid businessman in his Mercedes was
Apparently this guy was driving so
major
fast
error
that
by not getting
the
that
usual
removed.
rules about punishment are not in effect. They're going to pursue something higher and more.
They're taking him to court, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not just 500 zloty fine. I mean,
Are
like
there any laws against it? Like, doesn't it just cut off because the laws are outdated?
I think if you're judged to be driving recklessly, which this certainly has to qualify as that, there are a different set of rules. It's more than just the.
Although never applied, it would seem.
I guess, Josh, I've said many times before, if the government really wants to make money in this country, all they have to do is enforce the speed limit on the autostrada. They'll make billions of zloty every day. Everybody is going way too fast on the autostrada.
Yeah.
Dr. Mike?
I agree that people are going too faster, but then again, I hate waiting. So
go for it.
faster.
Well, I think there should be more private roads without speed limits, but only available to rich people with fast cars.
And
I'll follow that.
better trains, please. Better, faster trains. Thank you.
Every time I see the cops, they like to hide around like a bend in the road, and you see them with
Pedestrian crossing,
with their speed gun, doing people for 15 miles an hour over the limit. Come on. There are right now on the autostrada all over the country, there are people driving 50, 60, 70 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Nail those people. Hand out tickets to them, not the people who are driving home from work who go a little too fast around a corner before they see the cop and the speed trap.
They go for the easy targets here.
What?
They go for the easy
They
targets.
do go for the easy targets. Absolutely. Every time. Well, thanks for listening on this Wednesday at 2:00. We appreciate it. KrakCast.pl is the website, of course. Check out all of our back episodes, 350 back episodes now. And we'll see you next time on the news.